Hi everyone. Now that the second week is over and that I already released the theme for the three writing assignments that are left, I think it's time that we start talking about the annotated critical reading. When you studied the contents of the second week, we saw the way we approached writing. We approach writing as a process, and the annotating text that we read to take inspiration for our essays is part of this process, and I would say a very important part of this process. That's why we are paying attention, special attention, to this pre-writing moment in the writing process. We are also paying attention to this to critical reading because at the end of the module you have to submit two samples of annotated critical readings as part of the samples for your portfolio. In this presentation, I'm going to oppose two notions: rhetorical reading versus power browsing. Rhetorical reading or annotated critical reading, which is another name for rhetorical reading, is a rhetorical response to power browsing. Power browsing is what we are doing mostly nowadays. I consider that power browsing is a direct result of the extensive use and sometimes abuse of handheld internet capable devices, and it's becoming like a new epidemic in academic life. I have very solid grounds for coming to this conclusion, which I will expose as this presentation goes on. Kandra, Harden, and Barbara, in this uh, uh, paper, they oppose the traditional way of reading to today's styles of reading. They have named, they have labeled the way that we read today as power browsing. They consider that with the explosion of technology, so much technology that we have at hand, and with the amount of information that we are exposed to, we have radically changed the way we read, or the way we read. They have termed this style of reading as power browsing, and it refers to the way in which we rarely or we read complete text or full text, but simply we skim and search for information. This is a very dangerous practice, I would say, because we are not reading horizontally anymore, but we are reading I'm sorry, we're reading horizontally now. We are not reading vertically. So the type of reading that we do is superficial, it stays on the surface, and so we don't go in depth anymore. And today, being literate has acquired a new dimension. Being literate today is no longer the ability to understand the written word. Now it means more interacting with the text, engaging in what you read. That's why rhetorical reading or critical reading is essential now, and we have to learn the strategies for doing critical reading. Critical reading goes further than just being satisfied with what the text says. It also involves reflecting on what the text describes and analyzing what the text actually means in the context of your studies, but not only in terms of content, but in terms of visuals as well. And I'm going to be referring to this in this presentation. Being rhetorically aware means active reading. When you do active reading now, for example, if you read a magazine in an article from an online magazine, you have the chance to get back to the author now, not only to annotate your own ideas and to exert your capacity of critical analysis, but you have the possibility of even responding to the author by inserting your comments in the YouTube platform or by sending posting a comment in the blog of the author. So is reading today acquires a new democratic dimension. Um, being a critical reader means to reflect on what a text says and what it describes in terms of contents, and also to take a close look at the style and structure of the writing, the language used, and the visuals presented. There are some strategies for um, critical reading that I'm proposing in my class. The three strategies, I'm going to be analyzing the three strategies in detail, and I'm going to be showing you some examples. The strategies are previewing, annotating, and rephrasing. Um, when you preview a text, you look around the text before you start reading. Uh, Previewing is important because you have expectations. When you face a text, you take a look at the name of the magazine, you take a look of the article, in what section of the newspaper or the magazine this article is, what type of article it is. So you take a look at the type of the source, the name, the reputation of the magazine, the reputation of the database, the author, if it's possible to find information about the author. Then you pay attention to the article as such, the head notes, the headings, the subheadings, everything in text are convey information. So is the author known to you? If you know the author, how does he or his or her reputation or credentials influence your perception of what you're about to read? So these are the sort of expectation that you develop before you start the act of reading as such. Then the layout of the text. How does the layout of the text prepare you for the reading? Is information broken into parts, subtopics, sections? Are there long or unbroken blocks of text or smaller paragraph? And what does this suggest to you? How might the parts of the text guide you towards understanding the main point being made? So this is previewing. The second strategy is text annotation. Text annotation, what the name indicates, is taking notes. Usually I recommend my students writing on the side as much as possible, and I'm going to be showing you some examples later. When you annotate a text, you start in an immediate dialogue or conversation with the author and the issues and ideas that you encounter in the written text. So this is a conversation not only with the author, but a conversation with yourself as you make progress through the reading. When it comes to text annotation, highlighting is not enough. So my recommendation is put your highlighter away, because the highlights that you make today might not make sense in future. So it's important that you highlight. Maybe you develop a color coding system, but at the same time you have to insert your notes next to the portion that you have highlighted. So write notes, meaningful notes, in as much as possible. So the important reminder for you, maybe if what you're writing brings you to another idea that you found in a different text. So when you're doing active reading, everything comes into play. So it's important that you write and you annotate the text as much as possible. So this kind of interaction keeps you conscious of the reasons you're reading, as well as the purposes your instructor has in mind when he had you read a given text. The last stage in doing annotating critical reading is rephrasing what you read, putting what you read in your own words. So the last stage is um, the way to check if you understood what you have read. So you put it back together in your own words in a meaningful way to you. So you can make an outline of what you have read, and this is not the outline of your essay. So you shouldn't confuse these two moments. You make an outline of the text to see the skeleton of the article that you have read, or you can make a summary. So a summary has the same effect, but the thing is that you condense the information in a simpler way, or you can make an analysis. When you make an analysis, this is of great value because you simply test the logic and the credibility and potential impact of an article. So when you make an analysis, you pay attention not only to the content, but also you pay attention to the form of the article. The questions to ask at the rephrasing stage is what is the writer saying? Is the point based on facts, opinions, some mixture? What evidence does the author supply to convince me? Am I convinced after reading this piece of information? Being critical doesn't mean that you have to uh, disagree entirely with what you read, or you don't have to agree. Being critical means thinking about what that you have read. So these are the three moments in the annotated critical reading, and I'm going to show you now an example of an article that we might be reading in class, and then sample student annotated critical text. This is an example of a typical article that you read in my class, for example, The New Scientist. So the first thing that you have to consider is the type of publication, The New Scientist. You need to find information about the publication, when it was founded, what type of a magazine it is, what are the sections in the magazines, who is publishing in these magazines, mostly opinion papers based on or articles based on research. So it's important you consider that. Once you have considered that, you also pay attention to the type of article. For example, is it a special feature like this one here that you should be reading? Is it an opinion essay? Is it a news essay? So all this is important to consider when evaluating the source that you are reading. For example, once you display the article, you know that you have a main article, and then in an online magazines, it's important that you continue expanding the information, because you know that you have spin-off articles that simply support in a way the information that you read in the main article. So it's important to consider not only what the main article says, or the article, but you go and then keep on expanding, finding more information that could actually help you see the article in a more comprehensive way. So this is what you should consider when reading today, not only the text that you read, but all the other elements that are hidden. This is an example. I'm going to show you now some annotated critical text by students in other modules in my course. As I said, this is just an example of an annotated critical reading by one student in one of my previous sections. This is the name of the article is Social Networks, the Great Tipping Point Test by Mark Buchanan. Notice here how the student starts questioning. I'm not sure if this is the first sentence of the article, the description of the photograph, or effective way to call for readers' attention. What does the internet tell about a person? She uses different highlight in red, in yellow. What does it mean? I have no idea what it means to her, because it has to talk to her, not to me, when you do annotated critical reading. So she keeps on writing side notes on the article, questioning, making notes to herself to later go back when writing the essay. All these notes on the margins are her own notes after reading the text. And after she has done all this highlighting and all the notes together with the text, she comes to an outline defining important um, uh, part of the article that she has been reading, like social networks, likes, mood, interest. So this is the rephrasing later that she does. Some students do the rephrasing after they have done the annotations by writing an outline on a separate piece of paper. So this part of the annotated critical text. As I said, text annotation is very individual, is private. It is your own type of notes, What's important is that you talk back to the text that you read.